Hey everyone, it takes a lot to get my attention when the stock market gets volatile. Over the last 2 decades, I've seen lots of crazy events happen that impacted the stock market, so I really don't get too excited about drops when they happen. But the last few days have gotten my attention, so I wanted to briefly talk about this and drop a few reminders. As of the time I'm recording this, the S&P 500 is down about 10% for the year. But if you measure it from the high point it reached on February 19th, it's down just over 14% and approaching 15%. More than half of that decline has all happened in just 2 days. And so I understand how these fast movements in the market like this can be very unsettling. So I thought this would be a good time for a few important reminders. So first, you should know that this is very normal. Now, this looks like a very busy chart, but it's actually pretty simple. It shows each year since 1950, and in the decline column, it shows how much the market declined from its peak during that year. And then the column next to it, the end of year column, shows where the market finished up for that year. Now, there's a few notable things about this. First, we can clearly see that market declines are in fact normal. Over the last 75 years, the market has experienced an average intra-year drop of 13.6%. So that's really close to where we are right now. And then second, the odds are in your favor. Despite those declines, the market has finished positive in 59 of 75 years. That's roughly 80% of the time. And this really shows that downturns are the exception. The market has ended the year negative in only 16 of those 75 years, and that does show that long-term investors have been rewarded. Now, the second big reminder is an old chart that's been going around ever since I've been in this business that talks about missing the best days in the market. Now, this is an easy-to-understand chart that shows how, for the last 30-year period that ended in January of 2024, the S&P 500 returned an average of 8%. That's the average annual return. So that was the average for roughly 7,500 days that the market was open during that period. And this period included the dot-com crash, the financial crisis, COVID, and the bear market we had in 2022. But then it goes on to show how just missing a few minuscule number of those 7,500 days would have impacted your returns. So if you'd have missed the best 10 days, your return would have been 5.26% over that period on average. If you'd have missed 20 of those days, it would have been 3.41%. So just missing 20 of those best days would have cut your return in half. And if you'd missed the best 30 days, your average would have been 1.83%. For 40 days, this would have reduced your average annual return to 0.44%. And if you'd have missed the best 50 days, your return would have dipped into the negative territory with an average of a negative 0.86% annual return. Now, that last one is fascinating to me. If you would have missed the best 50 days, which is only 0.7% of the total trading days, you would have gone from making money to losing money over that entire 30-year period. Now, this chart alone is pretty compelling, and it certainly shows that equities accumulated most of their gains over just a few trading days because you can't afford to miss those, right? But why is that? Well, if you dive into these numbers, you can start to see why staying invested is important. And this is because the best days hang out with the worst days. I've heard some say this is like rain and rainbows. You can only get a rainbow after a storm. So going back over that same period we were just looking at, if we look at this a different way, this really starts to become clear. Now, these are the daily returns that were either up more than 3% or down more than 3% over that entire period. Now, the movements that are up more than 3% are in the green, and the red are the negative movements that were in excess of 3%. So it's immediately obvious that good days and bad days are clustered very closely together. And if you look at the actual data used to build this chart, in many cases, a big up day typically happens within just a day or two of a big down day. So if you try to get out of the market during these bad days, you are very likely to miss out on the good days. And then third, your plan was built for this. When we're stress testing a plan, we're assuming that returns in the future are not going to look like the returns that we've had in the past. We use a very conservative rate of return, and then we backtest thousands of possible return scenarios to make sure that your retirement income plan will stand up against storms like these. So I know that markets like these are not fun, especially when you're retired, but they shouldn't cause any fear. I don't know at the end of the day if this current downturn is going to get worse or not. It could, but that's not going to be a reason for any concern. Just remember, what we are experiencing right now is normal. The best days hang out with the worst days, and that's why we don't try to time the market. And last, your plan was built for this. Thanks so much for watching.